And now it's sickening to see the new attacks on the FBI, threatening the life of law enforcement agents and their families for simply carrying out the law and doing their job. Look, I want to say this as clear as I can. There's no place in this country, no place, for endangering the lives of law enforcement. No place. None, never, period. I'm opposed to defunding the police. I'm also opposed to defunding the FBI. To this day, the MAGA Republicans in Congress defend the mob that stormed the Capitol on January 6th. Cops attacked and assaulted, speared with flagpoles, sprayed with mace, stomped on, dragged, brutalized. Police lost their lives as a result of that day. So let me say this to my MAGA Republican friends in Congress. Don't tell me you support law enforcement if you won't condemn what happened on the 6th. Don't tell me.
It's not business as usual for restaurants in Jackson, Mississippi. The ones that are open, like the Iron Horse Grill, are operating without reliable running water. State officials have told residents to avoid using public water indefinitely as they scramble to repair a long-neglected water treatment plant, which has now broken down.
I mean, this is a catastrophic failure that has been in the works or in the making for quite some time.
Andy Niesenson is the general manager of the Iron Horse Grill.
It's incredibly frustrating. And, yes, I am upset. I am passionate because, this is something that, I went to school for. I've got 20 plus years in this business, and we've had incredible success in Jackson. But without water, we're kind of, we're handcuffed. We can't do anything.
After record rainfall and flooding over the weekend, Obie Curtis Water Plant is no longer pumping out clean water.
Please stay safe. Do not drink the water.
Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves declared a state of emergency for some 180,000 residents in Jackson and surrounding communities, called up the National Guard, and reiterated the urgent need to get the plant fixed.
Until it is fixed, it means we do not have reliable running water at scale. It means the city cannot produce enough water to fight fires, to reliably flush toilets, and to meet other critical needs.
The current crisis follows a string of disruptions to the city's water supply in recent years caused by high lead levels, bacterial contamination, and storm damage. Jackson, whose residents are more than 80% Black or African American, according to recent U.S. Census data, was already on a boiled water alert for a month. Now, Niesenson says his restaurant and employees are suffering even more.
I mean, we're spending on average between $2,000 and $2,500 more per week on canned beverages, bottled water, bagged ice, additional trash pickups. And this is in week 5. This is day 32 or 33 now that we've been under this bull water notice. And so many independent restaurateurs like myself, some have had to close yesterday.
On Tuesday, the White House said it's ready to assist Mississippi once it receives an official request from the state.
This is a rave in the Ukrainian city of Kyiv. It's a chance to let loose and, for a moment, forget about the war.
I think that this can give people who went through very tragic experiences a certain feeling of freedom and a feeling that life actually goes on and will be beautiful.
This is the new reality for those in Ukraine's electronic music scene. Before the Russian invasion, Kyiv was fast becoming a top European nightlife destination. Now the 11 p.m. wartime curfew has meant raves in the daytime, and people are forced to shelter when air raid sirens go off. Still, DJ Garrick Pledoff says the events remind people of what's at stake.
Defenders, People who serve in the Ukrainian armed forces are in our lineups and attend our parties. After our events, they come up to us and thank us for maintaining this peaceful vibe in the cities. They say that whenever they get the chance to return, they can, at least for a few days, party and really feel it. In these moments, they understand what they're fighting for.
And there are other, not so subtle elements of catharsis, too. At one point, the crowd pummels a barrel painted with Russian flags.
I think that when we win the war, Kyiv will shoot skyward like a rocket. Although I don't know how great that analogy is. I think there will be a big push for the culture.
Mikhail Gorbachev, who was lauded in the West as the man who helped bring down the Berlin Wall and end the Cold War without bloodshed, but was widely despised at home, has died, Russian news agencies reported. He was 91. After decades of Cold War tension and confrontation, Gorbachev, the last Soviet president with a distinctive port wine birthmark on his head, broke with the past. He helped to remove the Iron Curtain that had divided Europe and bring about the reunification of Germany. He struck nuclear arms deals with the United States and brought the Soviet Union closer to the West than at any point since World War II. Gorbachev struck up a rapport with the West and with Ronald Reagan, the hawkish US president who had called the Soviet Union the evil empire. Together they negotiated a landmark deal in 1987 to scrap intermediate-range nuclear missiles. Gorbachev, though, was not able to prevent the Soviet Union's collapse. When pro-democracy protests swept across the Soviet bloc nations of communist Eastern Europe in 1989, he refrained from using force, unlike previous leaders who had sent tanks to crush uprisings in Hungary in 1956 and Czechoslovakia in 1968. But those protests fueled aspirations for autonomy in the 15 republics of the Soviet Union, which disintegrated over the next 2 years in chaotic fashion. Gorbachev became General Secretary of the Soviet Communist Party in 1985 at age 54. He was a reformer, setting out to revitalize the system by introducing limited political and economic freedoms. His policy of glasnost, or free speech, allowed previously unthinkable criticism of the party and the state, but also emboldened nationalists who began to press for independence in the Baltic republics of Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and elsewhere. While he was celebrated in the West, many Russians never forgave Gorbachev for the turbulence that his reforms unleashed, believing it was too high a price to pay for democracy. And in the final months of his life, Gorbachev has seen much of his legacy destroyed as President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine has brought sanctions on Moscow and talks in both Russia and the West of a new Cold War. As one Kremlin watcher told Reuters, it's one of the ultimate tragedies that none of the values that Gorbachev ultimately came to embrace have been preserved by the leaders of Russia today.
U.S. stocks closed lower for a third straight session on Tuesday as a rise in job openings fueled fears the U.S. Federal Reserve has another reason to maintain its aggressive path of interest rate hikes to combat inflation. The Dow fell about 1%, the S&P 500 and NASDAQ each dropped more than 1%. David Spica is President and Chief Investment Officer at Guidestone Capital Management.
Today, it's just a continuation of what started on Friday. Powell's speech at Jackson Hole, where he was very clear that the Fed is going to continue to be very aggressive. The market realized there is no Fed pivot coming and realized that they were ahead of themselves in that regard. And you saw selling started. And selling is going to continue because higher interest rates is not positive for financial assets and it's not positive for economic growth, and it will likely lead to a recession.
All of the 11 S&P 500 sectors ended in negative territory, with energy stocks seeing big losses as oil prices settled down more than 5% on concerns that the slowing of global economies could sap demand. Rate-sensitive mega-cap growth and tech stocks, including Apple and Tesla, saw substantial losses, dragging down the S&P 500. which briefly fell below a key technical level that most analysts see as support for the benchmark index. But Best Buy bucked the trend, rising about 1 2/3 as the biggest gainer on the S&P 500 after it reported a smaller than expected drop in quarterly comparable sales thanks to steep discounts.